Hello, welcome to the meeting of the Board of Education. Sorry, I'm not as prepared as I thought I was. All right. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and streamed on AACPS's YouTube channel. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you read those if you have not already. And now for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance. Stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now for the approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion or is your light on?
I believe it is, but I'll just say motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve and second. Do I have consensus to approve the minutes? Seeing no dissent. Establish the agenda order.
Motion to adopt the agenda is printed.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Do I have consensus to adopt the agenda? Okay, the agenda has been adopted as written. And now, item 2.05, recognitions. Today, we are delighted to recognize Mr. Ron Brittingham. Dr. Alato.
Thank you. I am honored to have this role this afternoon. Today, we honor a veteran employee of our school system who has been assisting central office staff in various ways for almost 35 years. Whether it involves arranging furniture, putting equipment together, performing electrical work, or just making workspaces more efficient and comfortable, Ron Brittingham, Central Facilities Technician, is always there to offer his expertise and guidance. In March of 2017, Ron was awarded as the Employee of the Month. During Ron's tenure with AACPS, which began on March 11th, 1987, the space allocations at Central Office have changed many times to meet the needs of the school system, and Ron played a huge role in these changes. He does an excellent job at interpreting diagrams and blueprints. Keep walking in the room. Come on. Keep walking. You know I'm talking about you. He does an excellent job at interpreting diagrams and blueprints and turning the drawings into reality. He holds high standards for himself, and he is not pleased with when he is not pleased with the results. He stays on a task until he is satisfied with his own work. If one were to look up the word efficiency in the dictionary, Ron's picture would be found. One can't get any more willing or enthusiastic to assist the employees at Central Office. He's known for his response to any request with three little words. What do you need? And once folks hear those words from Ron, they can consider the job done and done right. Ron is a true troubleshooter. Telephone lines down, he's right there working with a telephone repair person, assisting with wiring and programming. Having storage problems, Ron always has a plan for space and storage issues. All you have to do is put in a request, and he'll show up asking, what do you need? And the job does get done. Ron enjoys his work, and he enjoys helping people. He has an amazing can-do attitude, and he keeps the Parham building running like a well-oiled machine. Ron Brittingham is always on a mission, practicing the skills that he has perfected over the years. He always employs safe work habits while making emergency repairs and adjustments, such as cleaning clogged plumbing fixtures and replacing electrical bulbs and fuses. He distinguishes himself as a perfectionist, and he's a real star at extraordinary customer service. Ron Brittingham, your work ethic is stellar, and your track record is amazing. You have worked for 7 superintendents, 3 interim superintendents, numerous assistant superintendents, and thousands of staff members, all of whom have benefited from your efficiency and dedication to Anne Arundel County Public Schools. The board brings warm congratulations, as do I, to you and your retirement beginning January 1st after almost 35 years of service at the Parham Building. Please come forward and accept the following citations from Governor Hogan, Legislative District 31B Senator Simon Eyre, Delegate Chisholm, Delegate Kipke, Anne Arundel County Council, and finally the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County. Again, congratulations. Normally, we ask the award winners, how did they get you here today? But you're always here and have been for 35 years.
Yep.
So thank you.
Thank you.
So we have here citation from the governor.
Oh, thank you. The governor.
He's the big fancy one.
Yeah.
This one is the Maryland General Assembly.
Oh, my.
District 31.
Yeah. All right.
Now we have the County Council of Anne Arundel County. And finally, the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Just, I'm going to miss y'all. I had good times.
That's it. That's it. That's all I can say.
This is your family here for you. One thing I'm not going to miss
Oh, don't say it.
is that 5 o'clock call when it's snowing. Report to work. That's one thing I ain't going to miss. But thank you all very much.
Okay, everybody, we'll take a few of these. We'll bring up some panel. Excellent. Ron's family, if you'd like to come up for a photo. We'll get our children. You can get her. You got to. Where's all this? There we go. That's looking good, right? All right. This is why we're retiring. And just make sure I can see. Right, yeah, there we go. Perfect. All right, guys, keep looking this way. We'll take a few of these. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Mr. Ron, my name is Ron Abulman.
All his outfits always used to be so uber campy preppy, and that is like more my stuff.
Thank you.
All right, I think we can end there. Thank you. We're done. Let's end on a good note. And now the fun continues as we honor the Educator of the Month. Ms. Omasori.
Okay. Our December 2021 Educator of the Month believes that all students can be successful, and he doesn't mind rolling up his sleeves to put in the work needed to reach each of his students. Mr. Ross Chakrin, physical education teacher at Oakwood Elementary School, understands the importance of Oakwood's vision and supports the school's mission by fostering a nurturing, safe, and supportive learning environment. Mr. C is always willing to support the greater good of the school in any capacity and actively looks for additional ways he can make an even greater impact on the student's school experience. He is extremely dedicated in his career and passion for physical health and fitness. When you enter his gymnasium, you will see many of the typical pieces of PE equipment one would expect, and students excited to use. But there is so much more in the planning for success. When your eyes tour the walls of the gym, you will see Mr. C's extensive playbook for success posted around the gym. Behavior expectations, learning goals, positive attitude and perseverance sentiments, accountability strategies, differentiated indicators of success, and an endless list of available supports. But there are not simply something to read. It is his learning philosophy displayed visually for all to see and to promote the growth and learning of our students. Mr. Chakrin, you inspire and motivate everyone you meet, especially your students. Thank you for your dedication to Oakwood Elementary School and Anne Arundel County Public Schools. The Board of Education awards you as their December 2021 Educator of the Month. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Here's your plaque.
Thank you so much.
Here is your citation. So how did they get you here today?
You were obviously surprised.
I was very surprised. My awesome assistant principal and principal told me that I was coming here for the NAACCC recognition from the awards dinner the other night. And they said, oh, everyone's going to be there at the board to take another big picture all together. So they tricked me into that. So I was very surprised. I'm looking around. I was like, where's everyone else from the other night? Yeah, I'm just in shock. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Employee of the Month. Every task she does with ease and perfection. She will stay late if it means doing a job thoroughly. The office, meticulous and runs like clockwork to her efforts. Many of her tasks go above and beyond her job description and have for quite some time. She anticipates upcoming needs critical to ensuring smooth school operations. These are the words that describe today's Board of Education Award winner, Donna Hardesty, our Principal Secretary at Mayo Elementary School. You are our December Employee of the Month. Donna, you're always receptive and pleasant, and I can personally attest to that each and every time I've come into the building. You stop what you're doing, you listen intently, and you are a consummate professional through and through. You care about the students and their families, recognizing families who are in need, handing out those stickers and greeting those younger siblings of our students with warmth and joy. You make both the staff and the families of Mayo Elementary feel like one big happy family. Acting Principal Donna Uswick said that Donna is the most efficient, pleasant secretary with whom I have worked in my 30-plus years at AACPS. Mayo would not be the school that it is without her. Ms. Hardesty, thank you for all that you do, day in, day out, for the students and the staff of Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Congratulations on being awarded our December 2021 Employee of the Month. And might I just say, as a member of the community, she plays an integral role as a member of our entire community in Mayo, not just our school, because our schools are part of our community and you are an integral part of it. Congratulations and thank you so very much.
So tell us a little bit, how did you get, what brought you to here?
Mrs. Fox, the principal, told me that our school was receiving an award today.
And, well, in a way they are, because with your help, they are truly a rock star, so congratulations. Who else do you have here with you?
I have my husband, my sister, one of my sons, and my daughter. Ms. Uswick, who was one of the principals, acting principals, and Lenora Fox, our current principal. And I'm trying to figure out how they got my daughter home from college.
So here is a citation and a plaque as well. Just a little something.
Thank you.
I wish we could do more, and thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
Good night. Absolutely. So now we're going to take some pictures outside. Just a minute, okay? Very good volunteer. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything you wanted to say?
Just thank you, and I'm honored and surprised.
I think we're gonna need to scoot a little more. Maybe put a couple right here. Yeah, they're like, we need mom and daughter together. I know it's my next to the old board member here.
Thank you.
And now for Volunteer of the Month, Ms. Schallheim.
Yes, thanks. Before I begin, Hag-Yerim Sameach, Hanukkah Sameach, Happy Hanukkah to all who celebrate. All right. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, quote, "Everyone can be great because anybody can serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love," end quote. This captures what it means to give the gift of one's own time to improve the lives and futures of our students here in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Today, we are here to celebrate a dedicated volunteer who exemplifies this sentiment. Ms. Kim Walker, the Board of Education is thrilled to honor you as our December 2021 Volunteer of the Month. Kim Walker has been a member of the Severna Park High School Business Advisory Board for 5 years and currently serves as the treasurer. Her support of Severna Park students and programs is unwavering. Since the start of the school year alone, Kim has already dedicated 10 hours of service helping to fulfill the advisory board's mission of empowering all students to develop their vision for a successful and productive career. Although Kim no longer has any students attending AACPS, she continues to give back. Kim gave her evenings at back to school nights to recruit fellow parents in support of student programs. She volunteers countless hours to help facilitate a successful mock interview program in which all juniors at Severna Park participate. Kim was also interviewed as part of a career conversation mock interview initiative and acted as an in-house guest speaker for a Pastries with Professionals program. According to Severna Park's signature program facilitator, Joanne Brack, Kim's versatility has enabled her to fill many roles, including reviewing student resumes, conducting mock interviews, getting students excited about careers, and filling in at the last minute to conduct practice college interviews. Kim has the excitement, energy, and enthusiasm that puts a smile on every child's face and makes them feel welcome. She truly cares about providing opportunities to cultivate students' passion for a successful career and future. We are blessed to have her partnership. Ms. Walker, would you please come forward? It's with great appreciation that I would like to present this Volunteer of the Month certificate and bell to you. And Ms. Bell, so what did they say to get you here this morning?
I was supposed to be the wing woman for a presentation. They got me good.
And who do you have with you today?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's probably where my son was like, he had to go with me. Anyway, these are, I don't even want to say colleagues. This is my family, outside of family. From Severna Park. This is Joanne, and let them introduce themselves so I can get myself together. I work very closely with all of them. Tom again is the former BAB president. This is our new BAB president, and these three ladies right here are just awesome for at Severna Park, and of course my wonderful one and only child, my son. You tricked me. Senior Erson, you in on this, okay?
It's our job.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
Some of you guys want to come around this side, and we'll get a group photo real quick. There we go. That looks good. That looks good.
Yes. I didn't say your name, but yeah.
Okay, everybody, we'll take just a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah, we're going to pause now for a few minutes to do some more formal pictures outside or the lobby. I'm not sure where there's a. Moving on with the agenda. President's report, I'm going to give no update today in the interest of time. Item 3.02, Policy Committee Report. Dr. Tobin?
Thank you, President Ellis. Yes. The Policy Committee met on Tuesday, November 30th, 2021 at 3 p.m. The committee reviewed and discussed Policy EG, naming school facilities, Policy EH, emergency plans, and Policy JAA, redistricting and attendance areas. All three policies were voted out of committee and will be presented at the December 15th public session. On behalf of the Policy Committee, I wish to extend thanks to the Citizens Advisory Committee members for their work on researching Policy JAA and for their report and recommendations. I also wish to extend my personal thanks to the members of the committee and Ms. Ortiz and the other staff who work with the committee for their work in helping the committee to move expeditiously thus far through an ambitious list of policies for review. The next Policy Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 4th, 2022 at 3 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. And I just have to add that I'm just really thrilled with how the Policy Committee is moving along and actually cranking out some good policies to bring before the board. Thank you. We do not have a PTA report today. So item 3.04, Superintendent's Report, School Operations, Dr. Alato.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Always delighted to bring you some updates. Mine in particular is brief today as we are just coming back from our Thanksgiving break. Currently, we have 201 active student cases of COVID and 29 staff active cases. There are 845 students isolated or quarantined and 35 staff members at this time. I'm concerned that the number of active cases of both students and staff have increased over this short week, as well as the number of staff, now at 35, that are either isolated or quarantined. We'll continue to watch those numbers and support those schools accordingly. Our 2 full weeks of vaccine clinics at our elementary schools for 5 to 11-year-olds was wonderfully successful. The total vaccination for the first dose for those children was 3,521. Second dose clinics began on November 29 and will follow the same pattern of schools and days as the first dose clinics. This information is on our website as well as the Anne Arundel County Department of Health website. Additionally, we are working with the health department to schedule additional clinics. These clinics will be at the discretion of the health department based on their data of need and distribution. Virtual teaching for quarantine students continues to be operational, with the bulk of the students served coming from our elementary and middle school grades. Over the past 2 weeks, we've served between 500 and 700 students on any given day in our virtual teaching program for quarantine students. We have seen a significant increase in the number of students being quarantined since the recent quarantine protocol changes. Remember, that impacted the high schools. After hours virtual academic support programs for our secondary students remain healthy. Approximately 1,400 students have been served through our virtual homework help and online small group tutoring support programs. We continue to market these programs through our schools and via direct connected messages to our families. A growing number of families with elementary students are joining us virtually each week on Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. to learn more about our elementary math program and how to best support their young students practice and learn mathematics at home. Please visit www.aacps.org/tutoring to learn more about our virtual elementary math support for families or our virtual tutoring support programs for middle and high school students. And finally, I'm delighted to share some information regarding Winter Wonderland, elementary student artwork at Westfield Annapolis Mall. The artwork will be on display in front of the Container Store beginning December 1, today, through January 6, 2022. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Arlotto. I'm just giving a moment. Do members have questions or Ms. Corkadell?
Thank you, President Ellis. I guess my question is, I think it would be helpful for us to get an understanding of perhaps what some of the conditions as it associates with the, as it relates to quarantining and testing and continual modifications, if perhaps we should not be asking for maybe a more detailed health update at the start of the year after we have concluded our winter break. My understanding is they're going to be reviewing that new variant. We will have additional guidance coming in from the state, and it may be beneficial for this board to hear more detailed information as it relates to the health, specifically as what are the conditions by which we would start to roll this back and what conditions would create a increase. I think that would be helpful to know what those guide rails are. I just also wanted just to congratulate the artists that are going to be on display at the mall. Last year, I did get to know one of the artists very well through some of my students, and I got to tell you, the work and the heart and the passion that goes in to those displays for all of those who fill out is just amazing. And to recognize what they went through and to see that transformation of their visions and their aspirations is just outstanding. So even if you're not a mall person, that's a good opportunity. I would still say, park at the side, by the Pottery Barn side, and just go check out that art because it is worthwhile. And our students will make you proud when you see it, most certainly. Thank you.
Dr. Tobin?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, as always, Dr. Arlotto, for that update. So I have a couple of questions. I believe very recently, notice went out regarding the status of the voluntary testing program, that will be ending, if I'm correct. And I know you'd reported to us a while back that there had not been a lot of participation. I've subsequently heard from some families who are concerned because they sort of, according to them, heard once a long time ago and didn't fully understand kind of what it was and the follow-up. So I'm curious as to kind of where we are with that, if that is something we might consider moving further on, or where we are with that.
So for the good of the order and those listening in, Dr. Tobin, you're referencing our surveillance testing program. And so that's something that we have, this board is well aware, and the public, that we've been working on for months and months and months and months. And this has involved the Maryland Department of Health, the Maryland State Department of Education, funding from the Maryland Department of Health, some federal grant dollars to each of the jurisdictions to select a vendor from a pre-established list of vendors that were pre-approved by the Maryland Department of Health, which we did. And we began that process of planning and writing a contract in conjunction, side by side, as you well know, with our Department of Health. We kicked that off, and we had barely 60 students that had registered across our almost 85,000 students across the school district. And so decision was made with us and the Department of Health and with Capital Diagnostics, the group that working with it, they just would not be able to get the staff out to cover less than 60 students on a weekly basis. So we won't be doing the surveillance testing program as we had initially contracted for.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we can follow up at some point with regard to some of the concerns about communication that I've heard, as far as what other options there might be.
Absolutely.
The other thing is our favorite topic. I just wondered if you could offer any further updates on where we are with buses and transportation.
No additional updates. There's no great news to report. I will say, and I'm hesitant to say this, but I will knock on wood that today is one of our better days in many months. We at 5 o'clock this morning only had 20 non-operational bus routes, no service. That number crept up during the morning, and we're at 23 today of fully no service routes. That's one of the best numbers we've seen in probably a month and a half. But we continue to hire drivers, get them through the testing process, the certification process, and get them on the road. And as quickly as we're doing that, we're having drivers resign, retire, or leave us.
And I'm sure if you have anything to offer at any point with regard to any further information on the regulations we're waiting on for the legislation that would enable us to use other vehicles, you'll let us know.
Regulations are out. So we just received them. I received them from an email from Senator Elfreth yesterday. She sent me the regulations for us to review.
Okay, so that's ongoing. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other board member questions? Ms. Frank?
Yes, can I just, I know we had a holiday weekend last week, but I did ask last time, and I forgot to check with you when I met with you, about the student data. I think it was Capital Diagnostics was going to be collecting that data. And then what were their non-disclosure portions of our contract? Were they identified as non-disclosure agreements to not sell data?
Correct. So one, they're not collecting any data. I shared that with you previously and let everybody know that the only thing they have is the student's name. So they have no access to the student information system or student database. But they also, to your point, I was able to follow up with our contracting and purchasing team that there is, they sign as, they have agreed, as all of our other contractors have, that any information they have no rights to that, to sell, distribute, or maintain. So they have signed the same kind of agreement that we have with all of our vendors that manage technology and data.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And then the only other thing that I wanted to bring up today was, I believe within the last 24 hours, I mentioned last time that I had some concerns about some of the legal implications moving forward with requiring employee vaccinations. And as early as 24 hours ago, there was a federal judge who has upheld that injunction. So that federal judge stated that if human nature and history teach anything, is that civil liberties face grave risks when governments proclaim indefinite states of emergency, and that this state of emergency, he goes on to conclude that that he will be preserving the status quo in that case because the liberty interests of the unvaccinated require nothing less. So as I brought up last time, I would just like to reiterate that I do have concerns with moving forward with employee vaccinations, because if we are threatening civil liberties, then I think that could be very problematic in the future.
Okay, I believe that concludes this update. All right, and next we are moving to public comment. Yeah, so we have, I believe one person's going to offer comment virtually, and then we will have in-person testimony. Speakers will be allotted 2 minutes each and may not allocate their time to others. Ms. Howell will indicate when Your time has expired. The board asks the comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer session with speakers.
So the speakers, or in this case, speaker, will be allowed 2 minutes. You may not allocate your time to others. Ms. Howell will indicate when your time has expired. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting and must only address the topic on which they signed up to speak. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer session with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. So the singular speaker we have is speaking on item 6.08, the 2022-23 school year calendar, Dawn Schumann.
All right, good morning, or I'm sorry, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Don Shinneman, and I'm here to speak about the upcoming calendar proposals. First off, before I begin, I want to take a second and recognize the entire school board for everything that you all continue to do to support our students through this entire pandemic. I appreciate all the work that you all have continued to provide to our students and to our teachers and faculty across the county. Based off of the current proposals that have been put forth for the upcoming calendar year, I do believe, however, this goes against a vote that was taken in 2019 about post-Labor Day start times. And to my understanding, a vote has not, to the contrary, taken place at this point in time. I want to take a second and reiterate that post-Labor Day start times not only help our students and our teachers, but also our economy. The proposals to start after Labor Day have won bipartisan support from Maryland's top 2 elected officials. And while those decisions were ultimately placed at the hands of local school board, this school board did, in fact, favor those post-Labor Day start times. State Comptroller Peter Franchot mentioned that starting post-Labor Day would give teachers the break that they needed to recharge their batteries and spend more quality time with their own families. Small businesses that lose seasonal workers would get a much-needed boost during these tough economic times as well. In addition, the state estimated that a post-Labor Day school start time could generate an additional $74 million, including 3.7 in new wages and a separate 7.7 in state and local revenue. While this would be on a statewide basis, it would most certainly direct impact in a positive way Anne Arundel County. And that money could be used to fund teacher raises, pay for additional bus drivers. At a time when our teachers and bus drivers are understaffed, overworked, and are begging for mental health days, approving a calendar that starts a week earlier will shorten their break, shorter than it's been in years. This is not the year to do this. Please reconsider the calendar options and continue to keep our school start dates post-Labor Day. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our virtual portion of public comment, and I will return back out to the front. Thank you.
Okay, I have 3 speakers signed up for in-person testimony. You can all come forward, and that's Katie Davis, Ridwan Abu Ruman, and Amara Chaudhry. And starting with Katie Davis, Ms. Davis, I have you signed up for both item 6.03, policy revision, second reading, non-discrimination, code AC. And I have you signed up for 6.04, policy revision, second reading, violence and vandalism, code KG. And so you have 2 minutes for each topic. That's up to you. I'm just letting you know what I have here.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon. My name's Katie Davis. Dr. Alato, members of the board, thank you. I agree with the non-discrimination policy, but I just want to point out that I read it many times. In section 4, the phrase was confusing to me, and I've since talked to Attorney Ortiz and it's clarified, but I just want to point out that symbols of hate may include subject to a reasonable forecast of disruption, a new swastika Confederate flag. So I read that and I thought, oh, does somebody have to come forward and say, that's offensive to me. It's going to disrupt me. I can't learn in this environment. Like, is the onus on the student to come forward? And Attorney Ortiz made it clear to me, no, this is constitutional standard. It's based on case law. So policies are written to defend you guys in court, right? But what I'm concerned about is the translation to the administrators. This is a great tool in their hands. And so we want them to be able to say, like, oh, Confederate flag, remove that hat. Cover up that patch. We don't, she made it clear to me that we've already met the standard of reasonable forecast it to cause substantial disruption based on the history of the actions at our schools. So I just want to point out, I've talked to several parents and they were caught up on that phrase too. So let's make sure the regulations are very clear so that administrators feel that this is a tool that they can use easily and wisely. And really the most important phrase is the board prohibits the use of language in the display of symbols that promote hate. Those extra phrases are just kind of like the definition. It's not that we don't like these. There's a reason they're not acceptable. And then on the other topic, very briefly, so I thought they should mirror each other, but the other topic, it just says for symbols of hate, noose, and swastika. And Ms. Ortiz pointed out to me that that's based on the criminal code. So Confederate flag isn't part of that, but the phrase and legalese include really means include but not limited to. So just again, like, make sure our administrators and the people using these tools, putting this in policy into action, are aware that we have to read a little bit differently, right? Because most of us aren't attorneys. So just make sure your translation gets the point across that we want to create this safe environment, right? Because some of these kids are learning hate on the internet from their friends and unfortunately at home. So I applaud us for having these policies going into place. So it's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Rudwan?
Yeah,
Abu-
I'll have Amara speak.
Okay.
Ladies first,
Amara Chaudhry.
since you already there.
I'm sorry, and both of these, the following testimony is on item 6.08, the 2022-23 school year calendar.
Members of the board, good afternoon. My name is Amara Chaudhry. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you from our hearts. Today, as I stand before you to ask for the closing of schools for Eid al-Fitr, I want to point out that this is so much bigger than asking for just a day off. We are asking for the inclusion and acknowledgement of a community that is an integral part of this county, whose kids are a huge part of the school system, and whose families are longstanding and proud residents of Anne Arundel County. More than anything, though, we are asking for equal opportunity. Equal opportunity for Muslim kids to celebrate their most important day of faith and culture with their families, and the equal opportunity to do so without having to sacrifice time in school. As you and I very well know, every single day in school matters. Every single moment in class matters. So we come before you today to ask that we make sure each child in the school system gets all of these vital moments, the same as all of their peers, all the time, irrespective of who they are and what they believe or what they celebrate. I was once a student of Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I know firsthand what it feels like to feel othered, to not feel seen in the very place that has made you and raised you. I ask you to take advantage of this pivotal moment, one in which it is imperative to uphold the culture of equality and integrity our county and public school system has always been proud of. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is your product. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rudwan Abu Rumana. I'm the president of the Anne Arundel County Muslim Council. And I just a note that in our faith, the first word came to our prophet by the messenger Jibreel is Iqra, read. It says, read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clinging clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. He who will taught by the pen, taught man what he never knew. In our cultures as Muslims, we have a say that whoever taught me a letter, I am his servant forever. So this is the value of our education and educated people in the community. And you are the sample for that. By thanks, the blessing lasts. And I'd like to thank you for all what you do. We are all here to request the Anne Arundel County Anne Arundel County school system to close in our Eid al-Fitr. Last meeting, I know we did overburden the security here. We had 160 people. So this time with the school, we took it easy. I felt sorry for the security people last time, and I don't want to do that again. So make it easy for us. Give us the Eid day so we can relax. We want our children to look at their educators with love and respect. But now you tell me, how would you ask a child to look at his or her teacher with respect and love when he knows that his peers have enjoyed their day with holiday, with their grandparents, with their parents, with their peers, with their community, playing around in the yard and everywhere. But he or she cannot. So this is what we are. Students are your education. You, the people who take care of our generation, just like you saw Amara. And we have so many of them. There is an old Chinese proverb. It says, you see, but you don't see. This is deep and profound. Students are here. Who are Muslims are here. They do exist. And they are here right in Anne Arundel County. We have 18,000 Muslims in the county, and I think they have the right to have the message to reach to you that they do exist.
Thank you.
We need your help. Please don't forget these children. And what we're looking for is the equality and justice for all. We can do better in America. We can give justice for everybody in America. Thank you for your service. May God bless you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes public comment portion of the meeting. Next, we have consent items, award of contracts.
Can we bundle these two? Motion to bundle.
Do I have consensus to bundle these items?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. The items are bundled. Dr. Arlotto.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I recommend that the Board of Education authorize the award of contracts listed on today's agenda as 5.01 and 5.02.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, any questions? Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Amasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Great. Next, we have item 6.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Arlotto?
There are none today, Madam President.
That's correct. Item 6.02, personnel. Dr. Arlotto?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I recommend that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Amasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. Item 6.03, This is policy revision, second reading, non-discrimination code AC. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Council.
Good afternoon. Lisa Sneed, Senior Staff Counsel, Human Resources.
So before you, you have policy AC, non-discrimination. It was on a 30-day public comment period, and it is now on second reading. We did not receive any public comments during the 30-day public comment period.
Excuse me. Do any board members have any questions or anything to offer on this policy? Ms. Frank?
Yes, I do. And I thought that I emailed you these questions ahead of time, Ms. Ortiz, and I just saw that they were in my draft box. So I apologize. I meant to give you a heads up in case you needed to look through some of this. I think you probably will have my answers there because some of the public comment mentioned that they reached out to you, and my thinking was actually kind of similar to some of the questions that were brought up there. If you could go through some of the differences between the policies and the specifically the Confederate flag was in one and not the other because it was state law in one, but why was it different? If you could just kind of speak to that as far as with the policy.
Sure. So the policy AC is non-discrimination. And so some of the added language that you'll find on page 2, subsection 4 specifically talks about prohibiting the use and language displays symbols of that hate or that promote hate. And included in that is the new swastika and Confederate flag. And there's also reference to any symbol used or identified by a known hate group designed to promote the messaging of the hate group. And so the substantial disruption language is a constitutional standard that has been applied over the years, Supreme Court landmark case on student First Amendment rights. And so that's why that language is in there. But as was stated by one of the individuals who provided public comment, a new swastika Confederate flag, given the history of our school system, in particular dealing with race relations and issues of hate crimes and instances of hate actions related to hate. We meet that threshold and that standard now. And so these tend to be the 3 top symbols that come up when it relates to student attire or symbols in schools. There are several not Supreme Court, but there's several cases, federal cases on Confederate flags in particular, since that tends to be the one where some folks may disagree. I think nooses and swastikas are pretty clear and why they are included in the hate crimes law. So, but Confederate flags, as I referenced, have already been addressed in federal case law. And so the substantial disruption language, the information provided about history in the school system in the county related to race relations, racial tensions, et cetera. I mean, there was one case in South Carolina where the courts went back 30 years, right? We don't even need to do that in our school system. I have several letters that have gone home in the last couple of years alone on biased behavior or things of that nature. So with regards to Maryland hate crime statute, specifically calls out noose and swastika. That's criminal. What we're dealing with here is not civil or criminal as it relates to non-discrimination. It's just, sort of like what we expect students and staff to wear and not wear in our schools and in our facilities. The hate crimes law is a criminal statute and has criminal penalties associated with it. And as was mentioned previously, while it specifically calls out nooses and swastikas, it's not excluding potentially other things. So it is possible that a Confederate flag, a court could determine would fall under that statute. It's just not specifically spelled out. Why the legislature didn't include it in the criminal law article, I cannot speak to that.
In Section B, it states that providing for an inclusive and non-discriminatory environment for students Is inclusive part of the state law, the word inclusive?
So is this 4B, or are you saying section B
Section
issue?
B, yeah, issue, yes.
So just look at that.
And I can email you if you need to look any of this up. I apologize.
No, that's okay. So for an inclusive and non-discriminatory environment, that's language that we use throughout our documents, policies, and regulations. You'll see that LGBTQ plus safe and inclusive environments for LGBTQ plus students. You'll see that in other policies and regulations, our bias. The state law regarding hate crimes law doesn't refer to that, but when it's talking about symbols of hate and erecting symbols of hate on private property, it does, or public property, excuse me, it says symbols of hate. I'm looking for the language. So it's basically including, right? So the including language means but not limited to. But it's a little bit different. That's different than the way we're using inclusive in the non-discrimination policy.
And then,
Oh, and here's the language, I just want to be accurate.
okay, perfect.
So in accordance with state law, it is a hate crime for a person to place or inscribe an item or a symbol, including an actual or depicted noose or swastika, whether temporary or permanent, on any real or personal ACPS property with the intent to threaten or intimidate any person or groups of persons. So that including language there is non-exhaustive.
Okay, and then the last piece was, I think we're in C4A. Known hate group, is there a legal definition for that?
I think it's from the Southern Poverty Law Center.
So we looked at the Southern Poverty Law Center is very well known nationally and probably internationally for its work on tracking hate groups and known hate groups. I don't know that it's not a legally defined term, but it's a term of art. And so there are particular standards. And so the reason why, again, that substantial disruption language is important there is because there may be symbols of hate in the future that may bubble up, but would still have to meet this constitutional threshold. And so we wanted to make sure it meets that threshold and not that it could be overly broad, that someone can just say they don't like something and we want it to be a symbol of hate, right? We still have constitutional obligations to our students and their First Amendment rights. And so that's why the known hate group language was added to that section.
I'm either not understanding the answer or, so when we use the term known hate group, is there a list of known hate groups?
Yeah.
And is that found from the Southern Poverty Law Center?
You'll find that there and a lot of other, probably like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, several other organizations.
So we're using the Southern Poverty Law Center's definition on what a hate group is?
So it's not list
a
legal definition.
Of
So there's
known hate groups?
So that's one of the resources. Department of Justice has known hate groups. So that's information that is readily available.
You know that Ben Carson ended up on the hate group list for the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm not sure that I would agree with their definitions.
I'm not aware of that. I don't know why he would be considered a group since he's an individual, but.
I would definitely have some concerns with some of the language in this piece of it. I don't have any motions at this time, but the known hate group piece would certainly be something that I would want to check in and consider with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I see no more questions. Forgive me, I know these two policies are sort of intertwined or related, but we were covering the first one?
So yeah,
Right,
this is non-discrimination, yeah.
Right. Okay, just making sure I'm on track. So now item 6.04, violence and vandalism code KG.
Yes, so before you is policy KG, violence and vandalism. This too is on a 30-day public comment period, and I did not receive any public comments during that time. And just as a friendly reminder, the language in this policy primarily comes from Maryland hate crimes law.
Are there any questions or discussion on code KG? Okay. And finally, item 6.05, board committees code BBE.
Yes, so policy BBE, board committees, is also before you on second reading. This too was on a 30-day public comment period, and I did not receive any public comments during the public comment period.
Ms. Corkadell.
Yes, I guess this may be a question more for the committee when they decided it. Section C1, subsection B, under the definition of equity committee. I think it's a good definition, but I'm wondering if it's completely inclusive of the objective, because what seems to be missing here is I thought one of the functions of the equity committee, at least in the very, very beginning before I know some of our members were here, was to establish a committee also to help its board in equity practices, because ultimately the policy decisions being made and the adherence to the training associated, we know that the state is now going to require that of us as a board. And I always just sort of assumed that the equity committee would address matters in that function the same way budget committee addresses the budget preparation, that we would serve as, that the equity committee would basically serve as that piece. So I was just wondering why it was not included in that.
So, obviously Ms. Omasori is in fact chair of the equity committee, but I'll answer from the policy committee perspective with regard to language. I think we thought we were covering that to some extent, because one of our goals here was to have parallel language for the committees, right? And so the examines issues related to AACPS procedures and best practices that provide for educational equity, et cetera, is at least I think in our minds was parallel to what is stated about the budget committee there. And so that was the thinking. Now, if it's, if there's an issue of if we've missed something or if it's not clear in the way it's stated.
I guess what I'm thinking is that oftentimes the board has different roles for itself than it does for AACPS. Not different per se, but there are different policies that address different comports of that. And we have the equity policy that addresses that, so to speak. And so AACPS procedures are not always inclusive of the board.
Right.
And this section is specific for our governance. And that's why I brought that up, because in the past, we've not always done the blanket. And I'm okay with that, except for my concern is that it's by not including it, it could refer to so many of our other policy language structures that do just infer to the other, not to us. So I just wanted to make sure that we were included as part of that. I don't have language suggestion, but I might suggest to our board that we consider that.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm the best person to address that or not, or how everybody feels about it, of how to proceed, but um, I'm just wondering if there's a phrase or two that would be inclusive of that,
Mhm.
because this is about us and our committees, and most of these committees address specifically our functions of governance.
Right.
And although we take a broader stroke on that, I just wanted to keep it in that, clear and evident.
Make
but-
sure that's clear. No,
Yeah. As I said, so thank you for answering. I have no further
Sure.
questions
I
on
mean-
that particular policy at this time.
Can Ms. Ortiz, oh, somebody else?
Ms. Frank, are you
Just-
speaking to this?
Yes, really briefly. Handbook committee will be bringing some information, and we did address a little bit more in detail for onboarding board members. So that will be coming shortly, hopefully.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
So is your concern, Ms. Corkadell, that the board itself as an entity is not specified in the definition of equity committee?
I just thought that AACPS procedures sounds more of the superintendent's house than it does the whole. I was just wondering if there's better
So I'm
language.
wondering if like AACPS and board procedures?
Yeah.
Just because I think our thought process too was you're correct that the committees tend to focus on like the work of the board, but that ultimately filters out into what we do as a school system. And especially since we have our educational equity policy, which really talks about, what the school system and all the offices and divisions and like sort of everybody's and the board, like everyone's responsibility and role in educational equity, then I think to address your concern, it would be appropriate to say and board.
Yeah, I just say that because it has come up occasionally in our past, not in our dire immediate past as a board, where a board member may feel compelled to, they pull out the policy and trying to comply with it. And I just want to make sure it's clear that, but
So if I understand correctly, Ms. Ortiz, and I have something to add. So you're suggesting examines issues related to AECPS and board.
Procedures and best practices.
Should
that
it be
provide-
policies, procedures, and best practices?
yes, I
That was
agree
the-
with that, because a procedure is not always codified as policy, especially with the board stuff, because we don't have the legal obligation of promulgation of regulations to substantiate the little lists that sit on people's offices. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
comprehensive.
Is that considered a tech edit, or do we need to amend? Because it was more of a clarification, and it was
I feel like
originally
it was
intended as
clarified.
such. It was originally intended as such, so I think the addition of one word would be sufficient if everybody's, I will defer to our president on procedure.
I feel like that's clarifying, if someone would like to bring it to a vote, I'll. Okay.
Okay, so it'll read, examines issues related to AACPS and board policies, procedures, and best practices that provide for,
Mhm.
and the rest of the language. Okay.
Just that one word there.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz.
Okay, great, thank you. And Ms. Frank, if you want to send me an email, I'd be happy to work with you.
Oh, Ms.
I-
Corkadell,
I'm
Ms.
so-
Ortiz, I'm
I'm
sorry.
so sorry. I did have one more thing flagged. My apologies if my members will oblige me for a minute. The section C again, subsection 5, C5, we just put the word standing committees of the board, but, our other committees in ad hoc do need support of the superintendent. And I'm wondering if the declaration of specifying it clearly for the standing committees instead is too narrowing in its interpretation. I would probably want to strike the word standing. I don't know if that's another tech edit or not. but-
So I think
agree.
the concern, well, I think the reasoning, and I don't know if there's a better way to do it, because there are maybe other like subcommittees of the board that the superintendent wouldn't provide staffing for. So I think the clarity there was the standing committees, like for example, the handbook committee, there's no staffing for that. So maybe standing and ad hoc. I don't know if ad
I
hoc
guess,
covers it, but
Ms. Ortiz, I guess what I'm reading is when I read the whole,
yeah,
it's collaborate
yeah,
and then provide support. So in collaboration, you would determine what areas needed support. So like our audit ad hoc committee, for example, does not need support at this time, but may need support in the future. And so I'm just thinking that the word collaborate and would take care of that concern.
Can I make a suggestion? How about it read, shall collaborate with the board to provide support for committees of the board as needed.
Yeah, or add as needed, and strike standing and add as needed. That sounds substantive enough to, I think we need an amendment. So Madam President, at the appropriate time, I would like to propose an amendment.
I think that would be now because I
Okay.
don't see any more.
Just sort of make sure. So I move that section of BBE, section C, subsection 5 of the draft shall now, I propose we amend it to read the following. The superintendent shall collaborate with the board to provide support for committees of the board as needed.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
so in accordance with your policy setting policy, because this is a substantive edit, I will repost this on the policy site, the AACPS policy site, for another public comment period that will run up until the next board meeting. So if I receive anything, I'll send it to the board. And so what I do is I highlight the revisions. And since, we had the other revisions, even though they were clarifying, I'll just highlight those so that the public is aware of what's been added since. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz.
Item 6.06, Crofton Middle School addition schematic design. Dr. Alato.
Thank you, Madam President. I recommend board approval of the Crofton Middle School addition schematic design.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Corkadell?
So I just wanted to say thank you very much. I remember years back, even prior to taking office, and then again when we received a new principal, of seeing the need. And our principals are very, very creative in how they use their space and repurpose it and reconfigure it each and every single year to best meet our needs. And if one thing that our health emergency has taught us is that space is something that is worthy of investment. And so I thank the staff and Dr. Alato for putting this forward and recognizing the need. And I look forward to continuing to support this project throughout its entire life cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corkadell. I want to thank members of the Crofton community who have reached out and asked for our support on this. It is very important that we move forward with this. Thank you. And with that, Ms. Howe.
Can you repeat who moved and who seconded?
I second it.
Thank you. Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 6.07, appointment of ethics panel member. Ms. Corkadell?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the board recommend that appoint Valerie Anais to the Ethics Panel to fill the vacancy of the term ending on June 30th, 2022.
Second. Okay. Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schalheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, item 6.08, 2022-2023 school year calendar. Dr. Arlato?
Thank you, Madam President. I recommend board approval of the calendar committee's calendar A for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Schalheim?
Yes, as you all are aware, I have a couple of motions, and I'll just get started. I move that the board designate April 21st, 2023 as closed for students and staff, and that drafts of future calendars reflect a similar pattern.
Second.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my calendar. I've got too
There
many
shouldn't be a discussion.
panels. Yeah, I don't see any discussion. Any questions or discussions? Okay. Ms. Howe? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's give everyone a moment to process the motion. You have something, Ms. Frank? Yeah, can you reread?
The motion is, I move that the board designate April 21st, 2023 as closed for students and staff, and that drafts of future calendars reflect a similar pattern. I refer everyone to their email with the list of dates that was sent out to everybody.
Okay.
All ready to vote? Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schalheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Ms. Schalheim?
We also had the motion that was moved and seconded to adopt option A on the table, which is still live.
Correct.
As amended.
Yeah, well,
So I move to adopt calendar option A as amended.
Second.
President,
we,
you're going to have to amend the calendar
It
to
has
add a
to be
date of the school
amended.
year.
Further.
it has to be further
You
amended.
can't adopt option A as it is now
Correct.
amended. It won't meet state law.
Right.
Right. Okay, so let me do that.
Amendment to the calendar
Miss-
has been moved forward.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Okay, I'm on it. So
Miss, I'm sorry.
I'm
You
still
have, okay.
on it.
Right, okay. We have someone else who wants to speak to it. You had
So I'm
offered to.
rephrasing my motion to be,
Okay.
to accommodate for
Okay.
that, okay? All right, so then I move that the last day for students then become June 16th, 2023, making the last day for staff. Well, I don't know that I need to address staff. I know I need to address the student piece. Correct?
Well, we'll have to adjust the staff. That would make the last day for staff the 20th
The 20th, okay.
because the
So
school
that's what I
system's
want.
closed for Juneteenth on the 19th.
Right, so due to the previous motion that was unanimously adopted, I move to make the last day for students Friday, June 16th, and the last day for staff, Tuesday, June 20th, 2023.
Just so we're clear, this is an option A.
Yeah, this is an option A.
Oh, I got the wrong one up.
Y'all, we can't do one without changing the other. Waiting on a second.
Second.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I'm pausing for a minute because I think we all have to sort of process this. I'm pulling up the calendar. So again, this current motion is to make the final day for students.
The 16th. So
Got
on
it.
option A,
Yeah.
the original date for students to be out was the 15th, but
Right.
we're switching it one day due to the previous motion that was passed unanimously by this board.
Okay. All right.
That would make the 14th a full school day. And the 2 half days.
Would be
two
the-
early dismissal days would shift. From
Be the
15th
the
to
Thursday and
16th.
Friday, correct?
That's correct.
Put it all out.
Ms. Corkadell?
Okay, so I guess what I would just ask is if we could get something in writing here before we vote on it, just so I can kind of see, because you guys flew through the dates and everything, but I just want to make sure I have them correct. I just,
So if you pull up option A,
well, I have option A
Oh, yeah.
up.
you
I'm
go
just
to the
saying.
second page, the current last day of the school calendar for students right now is designated as the 15th, right? So it would move one day to the 16th. That would move the last day for teachers from the 16th, right?
Mhm.
To the 20th, since we're closed for Eid. And, or not Eid, Juneteenth, sorry, excuse me. And that is the motion I am now making. Because of our previous motion that we just adopted, we have to add a day to the school year because that day was a Friday as listed on all the dates that we were sent. And so this would move it one day.
And the 14th
I
would
was
be a full school day.
going to say, could we amend that, because the 14th and 15th would become the 15th and 16th
Correct.
as the 2 are early dismissal days. So we have, but we have a seconded motion that does not include that. Is that going to be a tech edit? that we're
Yeah,
voting
because
on?
I'm just moving the day
Or
right
a
now. We
real
can do a
one,
second motion about the last two. I mean, I think it's understood concretely that the last 2 days of the school year are always early dismissal days. They're the last 2 days of a marking period. That's been our practice for many years now. At the end of first marking period, end of second, end of third, and end of fourth, the last 2 days are always early dismissal days, but I'm happy to make that motion as a secondary motion. I'm just moving the dates right now.
Okay, I did have a question for staff. Thank you, Ms. Schulheim, for the clarification. My second question is actually to the staff on there. I am curious, and I apologize, I did not ask this question at our last meeting, but we had been moving forward with post-Labor Day, and we had the really late one, but this is not a really late Labor Day this year. And so I was wondering, because the last survey we took, which is a pretty recent one of just a couple years, had the majority of our population wanting to have Labor Day. And I did not receive complaints about it. So I'm just kind of curious why it was not in any of our options this year when
Sure.
it had been in previous.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, it's a wonderful question, and it's good to refresh the board, but also the public. So I appreciate you bringing it up. This time last year, in a conversation about the current year's calendar, a motion moved forward, was approved by the board that now gives us direction. I'm saying us, our calendar committee, and all future calendars for the school system gives us direction. And Bob can read through that as it was presented a year ago.
So this is from the minutes of your January 20th, 2021 meeting. Ms. Schulheim moved that for all future calendars, we evaluate the start date in the following manner. If Labor Day lands on September 5th or later, the school year would begin the preceding Monday. If Labor Day lands on or before September 4th, the school year would begin the day after Labor Day. That vote passed 6-2.
Thank you. So in that scenario, then that would be something that the next year would be then the recommendations that we would receive would have the post Labor Day because it's going to start on the 4th, right? I think, or something.
Yeah, I don't have next year's calendar committee stuff in front of me just
No,
yet.
but I'm just saying, like
but if
that.
Labor Day is
So
the
that's
4th,
how we're
then-
following through with
then
it.
that is the proposal
Okay.
we would give. To
So
the calendar
that,
committee.
along with like the motion that we passed at the last meeting and some of the others, that gets taken to the calendar committee each year,
Correct.
correct?
That becomes our way of doing business
Precedent.
going forward.
Okay,
Precedent setting.
okay. I want to make sure I understand and our public understands too, because so the calendar gets a little crazy with all the motions. Okay, thank you very much. No further questions at this time, Madam President.
Ms. Frank?
Yes, I have a couple of concerns with some of the just information that we're receiving today. We're moving calendars around. Between last meeting and this meeting, there was a holiday. So I did not get as much time to interact with my constituents because many of them were busy. But the few who reached out were surprised that we didn't have an after Labor Day start. And I had to refer them to, what Mr. Mosier had just stated. But they weren't aware of that. And some of them have already planned trips and some of them, they were not watching that particular board meeting and were not aware of it. In restating the motion, Mr. Mosier, you said that was the January 20th meeting? Is that the meeting minutes?
That's my understanding. That's right.
Okay. And the motion was to evaluate, is that correct?
It says, Ms. Schalheim moved that for all future calendars, we evaluate the start date in the following manner. And that's what I read to you.
So I would like to explore a potential option to include an after, at least a September start, if not an after Labor Day start. Starting in August every year. I think we had 2 surveys in a row that said people prefer after Labor Day. So I think starting in August is not reflective of what people want. And while in a subsequent survey, it was stated that it depends on which year or which other days were going to be considered, and depending on how holidays fell, et cetera, that they may not necessarily want an after Labor Day start. But I think the idea that most people are saying is we don't want to keep going back earlier and earlier and earlier, and that's not reflected in these 2 calendars. Additionally, we do not have a board member with us today, and I know that they were very concerned about this topic. So I would like to either postpone or table this motion. And I believe, Mr. Burns, would it be a postponement?
Point of order. We have a live motion and a second on the table.
Right, there's a motion to table or postpone and a request from our attorney to indicate which is appropriate.
Board members, Dr. Arlotto, for the record, Darren Burns, board attorney. I think the preference in a situation where you were thinking of either postponing to some date certain or postponing indefinitely, or on the other hand, tabling an item, I think the preference, if your intention is not to never come back to it or to require an affirmative action to take it off the table, the preference is simply to move to postpone something to a date certain. Given that you are required to adopt a calendar, I certainly would encourage that versus a tabling motion.
Okay. So then my motion is to postpone until the December 15th meeting.
Second.
Point of order. My motion has nothing to do with the final adoption of the calendar. It was to move dates on option A. So I want to clear my motion first because we're not taking a final adoption vote. But I also want to point out that in any meeting, one or more of us could be out. Illness, kids, life, car breaking down, etc. So, this is also an important item to me as it is every single year. So what happens next time if someone else is out?
Okay, so the question is, let me hear the motion again. I guess my question is, what was the motion to postpone?
The motion to postpone is the,
Is it the current motion
well,
that
I
you're
believe,
postponing?
I was under the impression that the current motion was to adopt calendar A with.
No, it was to
it
move
was
the
not.
date,
Just to move
the
the
final
dates.
date. Right.
For just calendar A?
Yes, that's correct.
To move to move the last day of school for students to June 16th. That's the
Okay.
current motion.
All right, so then do we need to resolve that motion before I make
But it
this?
depends on what you want to postpone.
I would like to postpone the vote for the calendar, the 2022 to 2023 calendar. So if we would like to resolve this motion first and then come back to mine, we can
Okay,
do that.
we can do it that way.
Have an adoption of calendar A motion on the floor.
We do.
Yeah, we did.
Thought
But
you
it's
did.
been,
And you have amendments
we have, so
to that calendar.
right, so what we're talking about is disposing of
Clearing
this
the
amendment,
amendments. And then we're tabling, right, where you're talking about potentially,
tabling the vote. of the
depending on how
calendar.
the vote goes.
Or,
post-
right, sorry. thank you.
Postponing the vote of the final adoption. Those are two separate things.
Correct. So what I'm hearing is the amendment or the proposal to postpone is on the adoption of the calendar, not the current motion on the table. So now we go back to disposing of the current motion on the table. Correct.
Ms. Ellis, I would suggest that the movement withdrawal, as it's currently sitting, you have to address the amendment motion. Otherwise, the motion to postpone would only be in order if it was to simply postpone the amendment motion. So I would withdraw the motion to postpone if I were Member Frank, allow the amendment process to proceed unless your intent is to in fact postpone the amendment motion.
No. So I will withdraw the motion to postpone and I will restate after the finalization of the amendment.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on the amendment on the table? Ms. Howe.
Ms. Schulheim moved to amend calendar A by moving the last day of school for students to June 16th, 2023, and the last day for teachers to June 20th, 2023. Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Ms. Corkadell?
President Ellis, I believe there was another cleanup that was necessary co-associated with this one amendment that came in, and that has to do with the 2-hour early dismissals. And I think before we move forward with Ms. Frank and Ms. Schulheim's other items, that we get that done and over with so that it's, because right now we are only 2/3 of the way through actually clearing the item that started off with the original amendment. So I would like to move that we amend the motion on the table to include, to edit the 2-hour early dismissals stated in June from the 14th and 15th to the 15th and 16th.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so now we currently have a calendar motion on the table. Are we done amending the current calendar? Dr. Tobin?
I'm concerned about one aspect of this. I'm sorry. Table that.
Okay. No worries. Ms. Schulheim, did you put your light back on or? Okay, I think it is too, but I'm not always on top of it. Ms. Frank?
Now I move to postpone until the the adoption of the 22-23 school year calendar until the December 15th meeting.
Okay. I have Dr. Alato.
Just for the board's consideration, as you're deciding on, December 15th is a packed agenda.
Yep.
Just for your consideration.
Thank you. Dr. Tobin?
Was there a second?
Okay, now, I'm concerned about this insofar as some of the justification, if I fully understand the motion maker's comments.
Ms. Ellis, I apologize, but there was no second to the motion.
Oh,
There was a previous second when it was previously on the table, but it was then withdrawn. And now there's a new motion, but no second.
Second. Thank you.
if part of the justification is that a board member is not here, I want to be clear if we're establishing a precedent, because should I not be here for something, if I'm ill, does that mean that anything that I really care about will be held off until I come back? And it is my understanding when I was sworn into this board that that's not how that works. So if we're going to make a decision, at least partly based on that justification, then I want it clearly stated that that is our precedent we are now setting, because that's a change in my view.
Ms. Corkadell?
I want to speak to, I believe, the other intent of Ms. Frank, not to the absent board member, because I have had to depart for partial times in the past and do not expect a hold on anything. However, what I do want to make sure is that if we are going to, I'm not personally proposing, but if we were to propose any amendments associated with the start date, that is significant enough, as we've all demonstrated through survey and otherwise, that if that amendment was being proposed, I would want to hold over. And we have done that in the past, particularly with the start date, even more, 10 times more so than the end date, because June is always sort of a weird hodgepodge and gets modified a lot. So I think families that have been around the block with us and with our state understand that these things come up. But on our start date, if we are going to entertain anything as a modification, I would want that presented, and then I would want to vote on it, not necessarily then, but possibly in January. I would be willing to. But for me, that type of change, I would want to get some feedback from the public prior to adopting the final version of the calendar. So if the intent is to hold off on voting to discuss and consider a different start date, for example, I think that is meritorious. Because I agree with Dr. Tobin on the oath piece, but I will just point out as a courtesy, if a member were to be working really hard on something and just simply got the flu, I would hope our members would be considerate of that on a case-by-case basis, recognizing, of course, our ultimate obligation, and because sometimes it is important enough to hold.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So a couple of things. We have heard from the public with concerns about, again, the Labor Day date. And this is why I was always supportive of starting post-Labor Day, is because it was consistent. It provided consistency. And the public weighed in on that on two separate surveys, and both times that was the choice that was made by our families. So first of all, should this motion pass, we do need to look at how we would potentially proceed with looking at the dates. But I am concerned that we did pass a motion last January, absolutely. But the public, many people in the public, they did the survey, they saw the results of the survey, they saw the results of the board vote on the calendar, and they moved on. They did not realize what the board had done last January. The other thing I want to point out is that was January 20th is when
January 20th is when you adopted the calendar.
when we adopted the calendar. So there certainly is room to pause and take a breath and decide how we're going to proceed. I think the adoption of the calendar should be a very thoughtful process. And so the thoughtfulness is paramount. To pass the calendar today in some urgent manner is, I don't see the urgency there. Finally, I mostly agree with Dr. Tobin's statement, but I think we need to be real with each other. First of all, we didn't cancel this meeting because a member's not here. Second of all, and this should have been first of all, I meant to say when we opened the meeting, and I feel very badly, I told Mr. Silkworth I would let everyone know that he is under the weather today, and he certainly wanted to be here. So, Mr. Silkworth, I apologize. But I do know that this is a topic that has been very, very important to Mr. Silkworth. He was intricately involved in the development of the calendar that the board actually passed last year. And we're all humans here on this board. We're all people. We all have lives. We all have bodies that get sick. And I'm not a black and white person where it's like, okay, if we're doing it, then this is how we're doing it. It's a case by case basis in my mind, where we are as flexible and accommodating as can be while still moving forward as a school system. So again, if there were urgency and there were a reason that we had to pass this calendar today, then we move forward. But I don't feel that urgency based on previous calendar adoptions. And so I have no concern about offering that flexibility to our colleague who wishes he was here today. So for that reason, I will be supporting the motion on the table. Ms. Omasori, did you change your mind? Oh, okay. Dr. Tobe, Ms. Schulheim, I'm sorry, I thought it was before some, Ms. Schulheim.
Thank you. I completely agree with what Dr. Toman said before. Something could happen at the next board meeting, and the calendar, as everyone knows, if anyone's been paying attention over the years, is also incredibly important to myself, And I have PTSD every year when we talk about the calendar. It makes me very, very anxious. And so, God forbid I miss next board meeting, but gosh, I would hope that you all would say the same things and table it at that point too. But I guess philosophically, I'm opposed to tabling this because we set an agenda at the beginning of this meeting. This was an action item. We passed a motion last year that talked about this. Our calendar committee, who works incredibly hard every year, and they're all volunteers on this committee, is made up of all of our various stakeholders, including members of the community and parents and teachers. And for a couple of years now, they've been, in case you haven't followed, putting out calendars that reflect an August, although I have to say August 29th is hardly the middle of August. It's 2 days away from September. calendars that have a start pre-Labor Day. I would never suggest starting in the middle of August. Gosh, that's too early. But the Monday before Labor Day, I think, is perfectly reasonable. I want a calendar that's based in logic and reason. It doesn't have us, scraping into the end of June or July. A teacher stopped me at the grocery store yesterday and said, we're getting close there, and if I have to bring out my clip art for July, I'm quitting. And I said, I hear you. So we've only this has been available for the public to review now for 2 meetings running, and that those calendars and things and board docs go live the Friday before the Wednesday of the board meeting. So it's been a couple weeks and change, and people have had a chance to evaluate it. I've gotten shockingly few emails on this matter. And everyone's well aware that this is occurring. It's also been all over Facebook. I know people live and die on that platform. And so I can't be supportive of this, not because I don't trust that my fellow board members won't do the same for me, but I think it's an awful road to start to scamper down. I'm not willing to do that, and I think that we should proceed.
Dr. Tobin?
Thank you. I certainly appreciate that we're all human, but I do reiterate my concern that it becomes very hard at a certain point to argue, again, in the philosophical sense, make an argument for why some things matter more to others than other things. And so I'm concerned. When I said precedent, I'm concerned because I think this is going to be a very hard thing to discuss. Now, I certainly think, as Ms. Corkadell said, there is a case-by-case basis, but that would be an extraordinary circumstance, I think. Because let us be clear, we all represent a certain number of people when we sit here. And if I'm not here, my people I represent are not represented. And that's part of the difficulty of public service to some extent. That being said, I will echo some other things that have been said, which is I am concerned that there seems to be a sense that, it wasn't enough that we made and passed a motion last January. It's now a problem that people didn't understand the motion. And now we're going to, frankly, upend a lot of work. And I understand that we did pass the calendar last January. So I know it's not impossible to pass the calendar in January. But I also know that the staff and the stakeholders have put a lot of work into this. We are now asking them to go back to the table for something that we knew was coming, right? We this is not a surprise. And it showed up, and I guess there's some people who are not happy with it. I have not heard, in my own case, a lot. There are more people in my district who are deeply relieved not to wait till after Labor Day to start, because in many cases, for them, that's a nightmare of more childcare and many other things. So I think it breaks down along many lines. One could find arguments on many sides in the public. So I'm concerned about the precedent that we set here in a number of ways if we put this off. And it would have to be put off to January, not December 15th, just because of the logistics of what's going to have to happen. So for that reason, I cannot support this.
Ms. Omasori?
So I originally turned off my light because a lot of what I wanted to say was already said. But although I was not on the board when that original motion was passed, I would have to imagine that the stipulation to start after Labor Day, September 5th, is like if Labor Day is after September 5th, then you start after. If it is before or on, you start before. I imagine that that decision was not made lightly, and yet I guess I'll call it Monday morning quarterbacking about backlash and what have you is what's forcing us to stray away from a motion that I believe we should continue to heed by. All of these things that we are seeking to do, get input, survey. Personally, I feel like that should have been done when the original motion was passed. If it wasn't, then that is unfortunate. But as Dr. Tobin has stated, in anything we do, not just this calendar, you're going to have people who are in support. You're going to have people who are in dissent. And I won't say that we all receive the same emails, but it is not an uncommon theme, seemingly amongst all of us, that we have not, at least I haven't, received a lot of outcry over the calendar. And simply put, I will not be in agreement of pushing this back, I guess is the only thing I have to say.
Ms. Corkadell?
Okay, I don't want to reiterate points twice over because folks spoke. So I want to bring up just a couple points that I did not previous, just to drive it home. Number one is the amendments that we have passed thus far are intact and undiminished and will carry over to the next vote. So what was adopted is adopted. Barring any, there's you'd have to jump through some hoops to get there. Second is, I just want to point out to folks that we're not allowed to make motions that require us in that sense. The motion itself was to ask the calendar committee to present options that were before the 4th, 5th date of September and after. It did not strap, strain, or even assume that we would, that our ability to change that and modify that would somehow be hindered. So I was a little concerned about hearing some of the debate points from my colleagues that insinuated, I don't think it was an insinuation, but it may have led people to believe that somehow that we already adopted that as a standard. And the only thing we did do, just like we did with the date in April that did not appear, that we just amended, because I was the author of that. And due to I guess a misunderstanding, it was not included on either calendar as well. And we went in and we amended that, and everybody seemed to be okay with that. So my point is, whether or not it was that date or another date, we go in and change our calendar usually several times a year. And that's because the state requires us to. As a matter of fact, I've got two colleagues here with me who we went in as late as April when we came into office and did not have a problem with making those modifications despite some of those guardrails. I think those guardrails are very important, but I do not believe that it should limit us. And I recognize that not all members received boatloads of emails, but I'll remind everyone also that the COVID-related emails are different in size, scope, and quantity, and that we do pay attention. And I have representative stakeholder groups, not just individuals. So if the intent of Ms. Frank is to afford an opportunity to hear more about that, it does not change what we've already done today. What we've already done today is good. And it is in the same spirit, I believe, of the last one. Because, as I said, the calendar committee does a great job with it every single year, but didn't get the last one right, so we went in and amended it, and that's cool. because that's the back to we're all humans again, I guess. But I just want to bring that up that, we need to be a little bit more flexible and sensitive to this, and seeing what the calendars look like under the formula that the board made, because once a motion's adopted, it doesn't belong to anyone anymore, it belongs to the board. So the board's motion to ask the calendar committee to create those calendars, I think, is appropriate. It is not a waste of time. We did not know what day they were going to land on in particular. And they are proposing a whole week out before Labor Day, and we have members who would like to consider otherwise. That consideration is worthy of attention because it wasn't brought through the calendar committee. So if you're not going to bring something through the calendar committee and it is significant, then affording that opportunity of the additional time is appropriate. But I just wanted to make it clear to folks on the point, I'll just reiterate again, that the amendments that we pass do not get taken away, number one, because I know we have folks here that have been anxious to that. And I really think that I will err on the side of allowing our public to weigh in. I don't have a decision, and I'm not going to debate the meritus of the start for a postponement motion. But I will say that I would benefit, and I believe my members at my constituency membership would benefit from weighing in on it now that they know that it is a consideration of some members. So I will be a yes for the postponement, and I will not be debating the meritus of it should it pass until that time.
Thank you. I'm just trying to make sure I understand this, and I won't say the obvious that I wasn't here. But if we are, for clarification, we're trying to, ultimately, we're tabling the, we want to, let me not use the word table, we want to wait to reevaluate the start date. And the evaluation of the start date would be after Labor Day?
No, I would like to reach out to constituents and see if it either a post-Labor date or a post-September date. It doesn't necessarily even have to be after Labor Day, but I would like to see, would people like to at least start in September or after Labor Day, or see a little bit more feedback?
Okay, that's
depending
fine.
on, depending on what and I'm not suggesting another survey. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I just want to see, as people write in and as people contact the board, what the feeling is with our constituents, and reach out to, on my end, I'd like to reach out to some more groups, the CAC or a couple of other movers and shakers in the community.
Okay, and that wasn't done previously from the survey?
Well, I had a couple folks reach out, yes, and that's what precipitated my interest in postponing.
Okay, and then
so I'd
one
like to
last
have more time
question.
to do it.
If we move it to, I'm looking at the calendar, so if you move it to post-Labor Day, I just add for both the board and the public setting is that we're all the way into June 26th of getting out, because you got to add the 5 days somewhere. And so we're continuing to add to the date. So if you move 5 days on the front end, then you've got to add 5 days on the back end, which gets us all the way into June 27th, getting out of school. So, so it's 5 days. And right now we were already up to June 20th. Correct. But we're okay, so now we're in semantics. Teachers versus students. Okay, all right. My point is that if you get 5, if you gain it, if you're adding 5, you got to make it up somewhere. And so I think all of that has to be taken in consideration. However, when we talked about it in June, my question still remains is that when the calendar committee put all this together, did they not do the survey? Did they not do all the things that we're trying to do right now? Okay, so with that, I just wanted to have a little bit of clarification of how the process worked. Thank you.
Ms. Schalheim?
I just have a question based on what another member asked about the CAC. So are individual members allowed to go to the CAC? I didn't think so, so I'm just asking the question. You said you wanted to talk to the CAC. What exactly?
So
did
I
you
have a
mean?
couple of folks who are on the CAC in my district that I communicate with regularly.
Oh, I see. Okay. I just wanted to,
It
I
wasn't
wanted to
a-
understand like the
Yeah, I'm
members
not saying
from the
board
mass.
action, I'm saying just as a board member to reach out to some of the groups, like some of the CAC members and the PIAC member in my community who I know is very dialed in with needs and wants.
And I'm just going to say, finally, again, we have seen the community has weighed in on this a couple of times, but I have received emails from teachers as well who just simply don't want to go back earlier in August. That being said, the reason for the postponement is not simply to explore a post Labor Day start. It is we have changed the calendar options. And I think, and again, I will speak for my board member. I commit to this board, for me personally, supporting this board being flexible when it's prudent. And when we have a member who would have been here today, but was sick. And again, there's no urgency on this matter. When I look at all of this in whole, I see a reason for offering some flexibility. I hope members look at this holistically and not just trying to get something to pass an action that they're supporting. Anyway, this is your motion, Ms. Frank?
Yes. So, and to be clear, we made substantive changes, thank you, today on the current calendar A, which we have not suggested to the community as an option for this agenda item. So in the very least, I would say that by itself is a reason to take option A in its current form and get community input, get community buy-in. Out of the public testimony just today, 75% of the people who testified on the calendar, and one of those people specifically brought this issue up. So I'm hearing it in my community. I hear it from some of my constituents. We heard it today. I think that because of the holiday, people had less time. I had less time to reach out, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of this, because the folks that have brought this to me have said, hey, wait a minute, I just saw that neither one of these have a post-Labor Day start. And because of the holiday, I wasn't able to reach out to enough people within that time frame. If we need to push this back until January, I would be happy to amend a tech edit, or what we could do is have another calendar presented by that time, and then we reevaluate in January. So I'm not sure if the language of my original motion has to be changed if we need to do that, because I believe I said December 15th in the original motion.
Oh,
so
right.
that may need to be
I think you can just
okay.
te-
Just tech
change
edit
it,
and before the end of January. Does that work?
I think so.
So that I can get clarification in that you're now removing the 15th as a deadline.
Correct.
You're moving it to sometime before the end of January. So that gives us 2 meetings when we're before the board. And in that, what I'm assuming is that you want us to reconvene the calendar committee to consider a post-Labor Day or beginning of September start. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not in this motion.
This is a postponement
This is a
motion
postponing
as a
the
point of
calendar.
information.
And I realize that, I do, but in Mrs. Frank's words, it was about a consideration of a different calendar that has yet to be presented to the board, possibly in January. And so I was then assuming, and maybe I did that wrong, excuse me, Mrs. Frank, I thought what I'm hearing is then we would reconvene the calendar committee to consider a different option because that was part of your motion.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Okay, thank you.
So what I would like to see is I would like to see the current calendar that was just amended, released to the community. And I would like to have time to reach out to constituents. And depending on the outcome of some of those conversations, I will reach out to Mr. Mosier about if the calendar committee had any other options. And I would like to work with him and potentially bring something back at a later date. I'm not saying that we reconvene the whole calendar committee, but I would like to have some more conversations before we make a decision.
Okay, the calendar committee, so that we're clear, doesn't have any other options. The calendar committee presented two options, A and B.
Okay.
So right now, they're not considering any other options. If you want them to, we'd have to bring them together. And that's the reason I want to make sure that I'm particularly clear in our direction to support the board.
Point of order here. We are on a postponement and multiple times we have digressed into the main motion and or new other things. And I would just suggest in the interest that we finish off the debate and then proceed accordingly. Madam President, if
Thank you,
if
Ms.
wouldn't mind.
Corkadal. Point well taken. And is there any more discussion on the amendment on the table to postpone the vote of the calendar? All right, let's vote. Ms. Howell.
Ms. Frank moved to postpone the adoption of the 2022-2023 school year calendar to be considered by the board before the end of January 2022. Ms. Corkadal?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
No.
Dr. Tobin?
Nay.
Ms. Schalheim?
Nay.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
4-3, motion fails.
We have a motion on the table to adopt the calendar as amended. I see no lights at the moment. I'm not supporting this calendar. I would I think calendar B is a better reflection of what we've heard from the community. I understand why option A is preferred by some, but I prefer option B because of it will end the school year sooner. Ms. Schalheim.
Yes, so the reason why I like option A and why, and hearing from a ton of teachers, especially elementary school teachers, seem to prefer option, and some middle school, this is true as well, is that they had painfully little time to meet with all the parents. In fact, a middle school parent told me that in the middle school, one of the middle schools, they had 17 slots for that cohort of kids, and the parents were all told, unless your kid is like having an emotional breakdown or there's major concerns, please don't take that spot. And so I favor option A because the point is not to get out of, for me, it's not to get out of school earlier, it's to allow the time needed for parents and teachers to meet for the betterment of our students so that they can be successful in their studies, which is what we're all here for. And so while I don't ever want to skirt the end of June, ever, I like this particular calendar because it affords the time within the school year for parents and teachers to meet, and that is why we had that late start and those couple early dismissals. I also have to say that the late start, at least this year, prior to our school start times changing, is an utter nightmare for a lot of the late starting elementary school parents, for working parents, for kids who depend on breakfast. And I never ever want to support a calendar that has that as a practice in it. Again, that's why I'm all about option A. Thank you.
Dr. Tobin?
Yes, I'm similarly in support of option A, again, because I've heard overwhelmingly from parents, especially elementary, but also some middle school parents who find the current half-day or early dismissal, late arrival structure not workable, and it's just exceedingly hard for them to get in and get the time with the teacher that they need. I will say too, and in this case, I will invoke our colleague who's not able to be with us today. Mr. Silkworth says all the time that, and I absolutely agree with him, that at the core of teaching is relationships. And I think that we have an obligation to give as much time as we can for teachers and parents to spend time together, to get to know each other. That is the greatest, in my experience, even educating at the higher education level, that's the greatest asset you can have. And so I think that is an incredibly important part of Calendar A, and I appreciate the calendar committee putting that option in. And so I think that's just a critical part of this. And finally, let me say, one of the things that came out of COVID that I think is actually valuable is that we found that when we can have virtual parent-teacher conferences, so many more people can come. And I don't want to in any way shut that down. I want to keep that going. I think that's better for our students, that's better for our teachers, and that's better for our families and our schools. So I am firmly in support of calendar option A. Thank you.
Ms. Corkadell, your light on.
So now I will speak on calendar. I gotta say, so I am supportive of having the full days for conferences. I have, not only did people reach out to me individually as groups, but also I did some reach out too. And I know that the high school level, there's lots of big gaps in the day, and that probably led to it. But the majority of our students reside in the younger grade, in the earlier grades. So there is a greater benefit to more of our kids. That being said, I would like to receive more feedback. And now that we had on that start date, and I know that we voted against postponement, but I gotta say that I don't know now, reflecting upon either, that I am comfortable voting ultimately for the either. I think that there's some room for some additional work on it. So I am for all the amendments that we have proposed. I am for the majority of the layout, but I am not comfortable with voting for these based on the debates that I have heard and the comments made between the members. And so I will be voting ultimately for a calendar, but I do not believe it will be for one today.
All right, I see no more lights, so I believe we are ready to vote on the motion on the table to adopt the calendar as amended.
Ms. Corkadell?
Nay.
Ms. Amasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Nay.
Ms. Ellis?
Nay.
4-3, motion fails.
Ms. Corkadell?
President Ellis, in light of the failed motion, if I may propose to our members that this be on the next agenda so that we can pass a calendar with 5 votes, because it appears we will not have 5 votes today on either options. And I would just suggest that moving forward, and we close out this agenda item at this time.
So
I second it. To the fifth ballot.
Thank you. So I would prefer to bring it back to the first January meeting, as Dr. Arlotto said, the December 15th meeting will should not be focused on this agenda item. So, Ms. Dunn?
Just for clarity, I really do think that if we are, since we are going back to the drawing board, is there opportunity to look at both? So the motion in January was, and I'm reading it clearly, that Mr. Mosier just read, that said that that we adopted about the Labor Day. If Labor Day lands on the 5th or later, the school would do a preceding money. If Labor Day lands on or before the 4th, that it would be after. So in going back and reviewing the calendar, that motion is still been motioned, second, and approved.
Mm-hmm.
So is that an option for the table to look at, or is that off the table?
And I do have a question, Mr. Burns, about this, because obviously there's a way, if there were an interest, there's a way to get that done with another board action. But Mr. Burns, would it be I guess my question is how we go about looking at another option if that option goes against the board action that was taken January 20th of this year.
Well, I think it was pointed out earlier, your January motion was with respect to how you thought the calendar committee should undertake its work. It was not, as someone else mentioned, sort of a restraint on future or dictation of future action by the board. So I'm not so sure whatever you do move forward conflicts with that unless without formally moving to rescind a past motion or reconsider, as they might say, a prior action, you suddenly just simply directed somehow that a different calendar committee process occurred than what you already approved. You should go through the formal process of revisiting or reconsidering, or in this case, rescinding a past action. Taking that to the side, it's your calendar to adopt for whatever school year you're talking about. And I don't think any adoption of a calendar conflicts with that direction to the calendar committee on how to bring a calendar to you. I heard it read a couple times today, and that's how I recalled it as well. So the answer to your question is I don't think it conflicts with that.
Okay, so so we would, if the board were to ultimately adopt, let's say, a post-Labor Day start for next school year, there's nothing in last January's motion that prevents us from doing that. It was the last January's motion was basically addressing the procedure for adopting the calendar, which includes the calendar committee.
Your actual word was evaluate.
Right, right. Okay,
But you have an obligation to adopt the calendar.
right.
And so,
Of course.
so if you have to do something to adopt the calendar, and you're asking me whether whatever motion you take would run afoul of that, I would say only opposite of that with respect to evaluation, and ultimately adopt the calendar.
Right. We have had the calendar committee weigh in and come up with two options. This board could ask staff to follow the spirit of the two calendars currently before us and show us what those two calendars would look like with a post-Labor Day start. In other words, that's not going back to the calendar committee. I don't see any, it's just, it's showing us what that would look like. And, right, I mean, that doesn't go against.
Yeah, but I
what
think
this-
you're getting, I don't want to mix up board action to adopt calendar with the process by which options are brought to you. Two different things. Because frankly, the options are brought to you either based on your request or on Dr. Arlotto's need to get them going and get work done so that we can get a calendar done.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to, as the board,
Right.
whether you're revising options presented to you or making up a new option, developing it yourself. Again, you got to make sure you're not running afoul of any policies on this process, but you've got to ultimately adopt the calendar.
Okay. Michelle, you have a legal?
Yeah, so
Ms. Corkadell, sorry.
I think this got a little overly complicated. I'll just, I can only speak to the past on that, and we were in compliance to the best of my knowledge. We did have a situation in recent years where we were not in agreement with the options provided by the calendar committee and had asked staff to say if we wanted the date to start at X, what would the calendar look like? And it wasn't even a formal action. Dr. Arlotto agreed to it. He worked with our president to a date, and an evaluation for the calendar committee is like, that's the baseline. That's usually the least that we want to see. It doesn't say that's the only thing we want to see. So I'm not convinced that the calendar committee on a date shift of what a calendar would look like, it necessitates that. I think the calendar committee's number one, our members of our calendar committee are going to reach out to us about it, of how they feel automatically. And I think that if there's enough interest in reviewing what it looks like on a calendar, we're really just talking about a calendar and some dates, folks, and what that looks like, and then evaluate it. And then we go back into vote again. So I would just prefer a simplistic suggestion that just have our president and our vice president sit down with Dr. Arlotto and Mr. Mosier. And I mean, I don't even think there's parameters. It's simple. What does it look like? It looks like there's there's two additional scenarios, starting September 1 and starting after Labor Day, and what those two would look like. I don't think there's anything wrong. Quite honestly, I believe, Mr. Burns, if my memory serves correct, I was vice president at the time, but I believe we just viewed it as the same thing as get me information to help for staff to help out with a motion or an amendment. And it sounds like we have members that have an interest in reviewing that. And I would rather us flesh them out personally. So I just, Mr. Burns, is there anything precluding us from requesting of the staff to present two calendars with those two respective dates? I'm not seeing anything. And then, because the vote itself and the motions being made, that is going to be the decision of the board. But to present additional information on an active obligation, we didn't find any problems with it last time, I guess. That's what I'm going to say.
I don't have the calendar policy or regulations in front of me to answer that question very specifically, but there's no, to my recollection, there is no obligation that the calendar committee itself be reconvened. So the answer to your question is, can you solicit information from members of the committee? Could you gather information from staff? Could you ask superintendent to help you work through changes you're thinking of to options you've already seen, I think you can do any of those things. Are you obligated to reconvene the committee? No.
Okay, so it sounds like if a member wants to have alternative calendars considered, that they would work with leadership and staff appropriately, correct? Or make a board action if they were concerned it would be rejected. Is that an accurate summary?
At some point, you're going to have to get a recommendation. I mean, you are, of the many things you all do as a board, adopting your calendar has as many ripple effects as anything else you might move on. It's got a lot of practical implications for your staff, your schools, your students, your parents, and you would have to have your superintendent, I think, bring you advice about whatever it is you're gonna potentially adopt. So I would hope you would seek information and guidance from
I would hope
as
the
many
members
sources
would as well.
possible.
I
Right.
totally agree.
So-
I am not the member, so I cannot speak for them, but I can say that I would hope so too. And that was the only question I had, is
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I understood here, because it was sounding a little bit off kill at first, the way the questions were
So-
being addressed.
Two things real quick, so we can hopefully move through very quickly here. When we adopted this year's calendar, options were presented by, well, there was a survey, I believe, for that one. Options were presented by the calendar committee, and then taking in that information, two board members worked together and brought another option, which was the one that ended up being adopted. So there's a process for that. We've done it. Whoever chooses to bring another staff and brings a viable option. So that being said, we have a motion on the table to bring this back to, the motion currently says December 15th meeting. Can we make that January 5th?
Yeah, I'm happy to take edit if my second is okay with the tech edit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had brought it up, but now
To
in
flex it
writing,
out.
like the written,
I second.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, the flexibility of the date, I totally appreciate with it being budget presentation day. And leader.
And really, that doesn't even need a motion. Two members can request an agenda item, and that can happen. Yeah, right, we have to pass a calendar. So in other words,
So I'm sorry. So we're not going to bring this back at the December 15th meeting. What was the date that was decided instead?
the January 5th, I believe. Okay.
Point of order, I have a problem with all of this. Can we be more specific, please, on what exactly it is we're trying to decide on? I thought it was first December 15th, and then it was January 5th, and now it's sometime in January. You know, I do want to point out that our community waits for this calendar so that they can make their own arrangements. So the later we wait, the less time they have.
Right.
Bless you.
January 5th is the next viable meeting to bring this back, and I'm happy to put that on the agenda for.
I don't know. I mean, there is a
Or
motion
recommend
and a
it to be
second
on
on
the
the
agenda.
table. You don't have my consensus on this, so I think we should vote
All right,
on
we'll
it.
vote to bring this to the January 5th meeting.
If we're voting, President Ellis,
I'm
I would
sorry,
like
Ms.
closing
Frank's- Ms.
comments.
Frank's light is on. I'm sorry.
Okay, I
Ms.
just
Frank.
wanted to say I wanted
I
closing
missed it.
comments.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, just in closing comments, we, as Mr. Burns pointed out, we do have an obligation to pass it on the calendar, and we do have a very busy, already obliged December. And so I'm happy to move this along, but I'm just going to point out it's not like we passed something and we're talking about going back in. We do not have passed calendar yet. And this is a practical obligation that I would think that someone who would want to get the calendar passed as quickly as possible would be supporting, because January 5th is the most practical, appropriate date being moved forward. And clearly with my original motion, you know that I would have preferred it sooner. but I recognize the necessity and the time. I'm looking at the time and how much good time we were making. And we've been on this for an hour and a half, I believe, if I were to take a guess. It
Okay.
feels like it. So I would just urge our members just to consider that we have an obligation for a calendar. And if you're not voting for this, I'm not really sure where we're going with it.
Point of order, aren't we speaking a little bit too closely to motive here? Like, don't presume what my motives are. you know?
I don't hear
I
motives.
did twice.
I am pointing out our obligation, not any individual member's motion. And I said that if you do not support it, I'm not really sure where we're going, because that is
That's not
a
a
fair
motive.
assessment
Okay,
of our
Order.
situation.
right.
But if I offended, I do apologize. There was no offense intended. I'm actually just trying to get us into a consensus place because we don't have one right now. And this motion does address that. So my apologies. There was no ill intent by simply stating what our current condition is.
All right, Ms. Corkadell, you ready to?
I am ready to vote.
Ms. Howe?
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
I thought you were going to repeat.
I can read it. I apologize. Ms. Corkadell moved that the board consider the adoption of the 2022-2023 school year calendar at the January 5th, 2022 meeting. Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Omasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Scholheim?
Nay.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passed 6-1.
Thank you. I believe that closes out the school
Madam
year
President, may I
calendar
just
agenda
ask a
item.
question so that I'm
Mr. Mosher?
perfectly clear, because there've been a bunch of different motions. I want to be clear on what exactly it is you want us to bring back to you on January 5th. You've altered and amended option A,
Correct.
right, to close on the date of Eid al-Fitr and to make up that day in June, but you've done nothing to option B.
Correct.
So am I bringing back amended option A? Are we bringing back amended option A and option B? We're not bringing back option B?
Ms. Dent?
So you're answering my question. Did I?
No, sorry.
Sorry. You're now answering the question that I've had all day, right? It's like for the last hour. I've said it in 3 different ways. What are we asking for when we come back? And I do think that, Ms. Corkdale explained to me a little bit earlier that one of the processes, the president and vice president work with Dr. Arlotto and whomever, and you, I guess the other person is, to be able to get the different things that we've talked about today kind of solidified, because otherwise we'll be here on January 5th, still trying to figure out what it is that we want.
And that's why I
Just
was
wanted to be
saying
clear going
that
forward. I don't-
this is not the place for those details. This would be for our leadership to convene with the others and figure that out. That it's not included in my motion by design because I'm not a member who is requesting any alternative.
So we had 2 options before us. One of them was amended because it would have taken separate motions to amend the other one. But if we were to have done that, it would have, I think it's safe to assume that it would have been reflective of what we did to option A.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
So I think that it makes sense to bring back options A and B as option A was amended. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Does that?
It should have been brought to us from the start.
That's okay. So,
I'm sorry, one more, and then I'm not going to apologize. So the evaluation of the January 20th event that took place, the board, the calendar committee took painstaking time to decide whether the calendar, based off of motion that we put on the table, and even though we're saying that it was to evaluate, our words matter, right? And so I would not believe that they didn't take that evaluate. I don't think they took it out of context. I think there was good work done to follow this guidance before, after. And I think that during the conversation that you and the vice president have, I think that something has to be definitively given to the calendar committee going forward that either clarifies what we mean or give us some options, because I took that to be, when I looked at this, sight unseen, that this meant we're actually going to these dates. And so for me, when you use the word evaluate, you're evaluating what it looks like, but it does not give you, didn't give them the leeway to look at calendars out post Labor Day. So that's, I think there's some clarification for me that still needs to be resolved around it. And I'm done.
So here's, I think, the point I was trying to make earlier is if members wish to bring back other options than A or B at that January meeting, it is up to them to do that work, to work with staff or whoever. That's what we did for this time last year, or around this time last year. Members brought back an additional option. So perhaps, I'm going to use Ms. Frank's name because she had talked about these dates. Perhaps Ms. Frank, in addition to A and B, brings back a C and D. And what we did last time was those options were shared, like they were printed. We worked with Mr. Mosier, and they were put into print like this, so that when the meeting, the release went out for the meeting and the documents for the meeting were available to members and then to the public, those options were seen. People would have a chance to weigh in and comment as the board considers it in January. Does that make sense? I hope I explained it. Okay. And Ms. Frank, do you have something else?
Just briefly. So the two options here at this point seem to be either amendments can be made on the floor, as we did today, to slightly amend the calendar, or if something more substantive needs to happen, then hopefully that will be presented to the public in advance if there are larger changes that would be made or are suggested to be made. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Moving on to item 6.09, ratification of the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the Association of Educational Leaders. Dr. Olato.
Thank you, Madam President. I recommend approval of the tentative agreement between the Board of Education and the Association of Educational Leaders.
So moved.
Second.
Good afternoon.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, Ms. Ellis, Dr. Olato, and members of the board. The negotiating teams for the Board of Education and the Association of Educational Leaders have reached a tentative agreement for fiscal year 2022, subject to your approval. For the record, my name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. In brief, the summary of changes as agreed upon by both parties include, but are not limited to, the following. 1 step for all eligible Unit 2 employees. 1 back step will be provided to eligible Unit 2 employees who did not receive a step in the 2011-2012 academic year as called for in their applicable negotiated agreement based upon an established criteria. 1 back step will also be provided mid-year to eligible Unit 2 employees who did not receive a step in the 2012-2013 academic year as called for in their applicable negotiated agreement based on an established criteria. The teams diligently worked to reach an agreement that serves the best interest of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, AEL members, and supports their commitment to Anne Arundel County Public Schools students, staff, and community. I would like to thank Edie Pickin, the AEL president, and the entire negotiating team for their dedicated efforts during FY22 negotiations. On November 19th, 2021, AEL finalized the ratification vote for this agreement, and I respectfully request your approval and ratification of the noted summary of changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Any, I see no board comments or questions. Ms. Howell?
Ms. Corkadell? Aye. Ms. Umasore?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim?
Aye.
Ms. Dent?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Rull, and thank you, Ms. Picken and AEL.
Thank you.
Very pleased. Item 7.01, award of contracts. Dr. Alato, I mean, there's nothing.
Glad to answer any questions that board members have regarding the contract.
Any questions? I see none. So that concludes the agenda for this public meeting. The board will meet next December 15th at 6 p.m. And the dates and times for our committees are posted online. Those are virtual meetings if people wish to view. Ms. Schulheim.
Yes, Madam President, I move that the board go into closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter and to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters that relate to the negotiations.
Oh, second.
Okay. Do I have consensus to close?
Yes.
Okay. This meeting is now closed. Thank you.